So the theme, right? That now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. This is about that. And now we who with unveiled faces that reflect the Lord's glory are being transformed into his likeness with ever-increasing glory, which is from the Lord, who is the Spirit. Talk about transformation from glory to glory, understanding how we can be transformed by the gospel. Today's message, third, transforming a life riddled with shame and guilt into a life of true freedom from all that enslaves us. A daunting task. I'm going to take a stab at it. I know something about this. Originally, when I gave this message, I, of course, updated it. It was titled, "The Only Cleanser Available to Wipe Out the Immovable Stain That the World's Best Has Long Given Up," was original message. For that, I want to introduce to you a man. In his days, it was very important psychologist. So I'm going to mix this message with the field of psychology. Hobart Mauer, never heard of him, I'm sure. Once the president of the American Psychological Association, and he was a longtime professor of psychology at the University of Illinois from 48 to 1975. He was somewhat of a name recognition in academia in those days. One time he made this speech in front of thousands of psychologists. For several decades, we psychologists have looked upon the whole matter of sin and moral accountability as a great incubus. I didn't know what that word meant. Cause of great distress. For several decades, we psychologists have looked upon the whole matter of sin and moral accountability as a great incubus. And we have acclaimed our freedom from it, sin, as epic making. We have declared freedom from sin, and that is epic making, the great, awesome step in the right direction. But at length, we have discovered to be free in the sense to have the excuse of being sick rather than sinful. This is the society we live in. If you have a problem really owning up to your sin, you have had a lot of help from the field of social science, because we are no longer sinful, we're merely sick. We play with words, relabel things. For example, according to Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, 2013, infidelity is a disease of hypersexual disorder. And you treat disorder, a medical condition, with pills and shots. And this is where you live. This is where I live. Is to also court the danger of being lost. In becoming amoral, ethically neutral, and free, we have cut the very roots of our being, lost our deepest sense of selfhood and identity. I thought by making everything sickness or some type of syndrome that it would actually lead to something more freer, but we found out that that is actually contrary to the truth. Hobart Mauer continues, if psychologist is going to be able to deal with the reality of shame and guilt, and we live there, we have to somehow understand a new term. We just cannot talk about it, shame and guilt, as wrongdoing or maladjustment. We may have to reintroduce the word into the vocabulary of the psychologist. We're going to come back to him a little later. Again, I'm going to set the table with this and leave you hanging. I'm going to come back. So, today is about Peter. Of course, of all the disciples, you feel like you know him the best, correct? You do. But most people only know the half the story. So how would you feel if someone whom you trusted called you? So this is between Peter and Jesus. They're tight. But we go to Matthew 16:15. So Jesus said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" And Peter, he was always first one to speak. "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Oh, Jesus liked that answer. Verse 17. "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has now revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven." I mean, he's feeling good. That's the right answer. Got that one right. Only 4 verses later, from that time, Jesus began to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. Wow. Upon hearing this, Peter, verse 22, took him aside and began to rebuke Jesus out of love, concern. "Far be it from you, Lord. This shall never happen to you." And I'm sure that's another good answer. I mean, that came out of compassion. Who's going to kill you? That will never happen. You know? Verse 23. But Jesus turned to Peter, just turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of men." Peter, how are you feeling now? I mean, he was looking at him. "Get behind me, Satan." What? Only 4 verses earlier, I had the right answer, and I was walking on cloud 9. And what? I'm a Satan now? Now, different scenario. Shortly before Jesus was arrested, this night before the crucifixion. This is a familiar story. Jesus, "You will all fall away." Mark 14:27. Luke 22:32. "But I pray for you, Peter, that your faith may not fail." Why do you single me out? But, I'm praying for you, Peter. Peter said to him, Luke 22:33, "Lord, I'm ready to go with you both to prison and to death, not me." Surely you must just pray for some other guys. I'm in. Trust me, prison, death. Mark 14:29. This is how he put it. This one, he not only assured that he won't fall away, but in this one, he threw all the 11 guys under the bus when he said, "Even though they all fall away, I will not." That's classic definition of putting people under the bus. Like, they made those guys, but not I. Jesus. I'm going back from Mark to Luke. "I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow this day until you deny 3 times that you know me." I tell you what, it's like Dinah Ross and Don, the 11 guys. "Yeah, that's right." That's what they're telling them. Throw on the butt. Yeah, you're the one who's going to deny Jesus. All right. That's enough. This is what we want to know. How do you feel, Peter? "Get behind me, Satan." Oh, Jesus. But you shall deny me 3 times that you know me. How do you feel? This is a post-resurrection conversation between the two, reveals how Peter probably felt. So this is after Jesus had resurrected, and this is a conversation that they had. Unfortunately, Jesus was right on about Peter, as you well know. He denied Jesus 3 times, but there are 3 facts that stand out that we need to reckon. Peter is lifetime fisherman. Any movie that I saw about disciple, Peter's always the biggest guy of the 12. Rugged, tall, and big. You know who is the person that got him to deny Jesus 3 times? Luke 22:56. Peter, likely a burly man in his 30s, the accuser, a servant girl. Can you imagine 6'2", 250 strapping man and this 4'11" little girl? I know you were with Jesus. I did not. That's all it took. So scary. Fact number 2. When he said, I don't know, he used the word eido, literally meaning see. I don't know this man literally means I've never seen this guy. It was flat out, entirely denying. Not only I don't have a casual knowledge of him, I never seen him. It was a complete denial. Fact number 3. On his third denial, he cussed. He called curse on himself and he swore, blanket. That's the reality of his denial. Shame, shame, shame. About the post-resurrection conversation, you know this very well. This is John 21:15, 17. So they're having this conversation by the beach. Simon, imagine, Peter, 30, Now, I'm going to share what happened before this conversation a little later on, but this conversation takes place. Come here. So the picture is something like that. Jesus said to Simon, Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? The Greek is agapao. That would be the hottest love you can imagine in the Greek language of love. Agape, phileo, storge, and eros. Eros would be selfish love. Storge is brotherly love, kind of friendly love. And phileo is brotherly love. And then this is the unselfish, unconditional love of God. So Simon, son of John, Peter, do you agapao me more than these? And Peter, now, have you ever felt somebody and that person is talking to you and are you going to do that again? Like, there's some self-consciousness like, yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you, but he does not use agapao, but he uses phileo. It's good, but it's just not God's unconditional love. I have affection for you. I have a brotherly love for you. In other words, if agapao is the hottest love, hottest chile, this is hot, but not the hottest. It's just medium. You read some commentary, a lot of commentaries just nail him down on this one. See, he doesn't love Jesus. I don't think so. I differ on that. My take is that, look, Peter is being honest. Jesus, would you really believe me if I said I agapao you? In light of what I just did a few days ago? Only a few days ago I did this. I do love you, but, I'm being honest. I love you like a brother, but I said that before, didn't I? I'll die for you. I did not. I don't fault him for that. Verse 16. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Again, agapao. Do you love me unselfishly? Do you love me unconditioned? Do you love me with God's love? And Peter, well, yes, Lord. You know that I love you. Again, phileo you. I love you like a brother. I have affection for you, but unconditional, so unselfish. Oh, come on, I blew it a few days ago. So, again, I think he's still brutally honest. No false promise. I disagree with a lot of commentators who just nail on him. He doesn't love. No, I'm with him. I would be too self-conscious to make a lot of promises to him after what I've done. The bold-faced lie that I ended up actually, in effect, making for the third time. The third time, Jesus said to him, Simon, son of John, do you agape me? Do you love me? Except, actually, Jesus does not use agape here. Here he uses phileo me. He lowers it one notch. Do you love me with brotherly affection? How do I take it? This is how I take it. Perhaps as if to ask, Peter, since you aren't ready or willing to agape me, can you at least phileo me? Peter, how would you feel? He was hurt. Grieved, ESV. Peter was grieved and hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? Doesn't the Lord trust me anymore? Doesn't he believe that I at least phileo him? It kind of hurts. I mean, I denied you 3 times, so what? 3 times I have to, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you, phileo you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Peter had an appointment with his therapist. So this is where he was, on that couch. And his therapist said, how did you feel? Oh, I felt hurt. I felt grieved. I'm not making it up. He said I was hurt. Yeah, your boss, what's his name? Jesus? He was being passive aggressive. I mean, he said, what? Well, blessed are you. And then the next moment, you are Satan. That's passive aggressive. What? Feed my sheep. And then a little later, do you love me? That's passive aggressive. No wonder you're hurt. Look, take this and you will feel better. Here, all the sickness and medical condition, pill is what we use. Here, take this and get yourself feel better. Peter wasn't ready to go home. Sir, you got anything to get rid of shame and guilt? Well, no, you're hurting, grieved. You don't need, no. I've done some other things. What? See, I sinned against my friend, my Lord. I denied him 3 times, and then chapter 21 of Luke 61. Did you know that they actually saw each other at the moment of third rejection of Jesus? The Lord turned and looked at Peter, and Peter remembered the whole. So they actually met. I wonder what kind of look Jesus gave to Peter. I know that when I'm mad at my wife and I looked at her, like, I'm going to pretend that you really hurt me. Like, you know the looks, right? I wonder what kind of look Jesus gave. Like, is that like, because I told you you're going to do it, and you did it, like that. Or like, what would you give? Like, what look do you think Jesus gave? Now, just imagine knowing Jesus. So, and he looked at me, he saw me, and he went out, wept bitterly, deeply grieved and distressed. So, you got anything for that? Because I felt terrible. I felt guilty for denying my Jesus, and I felt shame. I mean, it was a little girl who got me to deny Jesus. I mean, I cursed. I used 4-letter words left and right. And I flat out denied if I ever seen him. I felt guilty. I felt shame. I sinned. Let's go with modern-day psychologists. First of all, if I were him, by the way, stop using the word sin. We don't use that kind of word. We have to medicalize what you think is sin. So it is TDD. What's TDD? Temporary denial disorder. Oh, that sounds like sickness. It is. Then how do you cure sickness? Well, with pills. Oh, really? So try the pills again. Then it would all go away. And Peter goes, okay, I'll try that at home. But anyway, I'm not done yet. Well, what do you mean? Now, this is the part that many people don't know. That's a colossal failure that Peter committed. around the time that Jesus was crucified. So Peter goes, I'm not done yet, sir. I did another shameful thing. What? What do you mean? Okay, well, see, I got reinstated by Jesus year 33. You know, Jesus resurrected and went up to heaven. It was year 33. We're year 49 now, 16 years later. By this time, Peter was the undisputable leader of the church. Well, see, in year 49, I did a very harmful thing to the entire church as a leader. Say what? Come again? What did you do? Okay, well, this is my story. At that time, there was a guy named Paul, kind of baldy, pushy, but he was my subordinate. At that time, Paul wasn't a big deal. Peter was. Peter was the head of the church, or at least the pillar of the church, and Paul was just rising in the rank among, like, Paul and Barnabas. So at that time, Paul, who was my subordinate, asked me whether Gentile must be circumcised or avoid certain food to be saved. Acts 15. Paul had come down to Jerusalem to ask this question, like, you know, faith plus work, salvation, is that what we believe, Peter, sir? Works can be circumcision, not eating non-kosher food such as pork and shrimp. So do we have to do these things along with faith to be saved? And Peter has said in Acts 15:11, no. We believe that we will be saved through the grace of the Lord Jesus, just as they will. Faith plus zero is salvation. Peter had taught that. That's the right doctrine. That is the justification by faith, faith by justification. This is what Paul heard from his boss at that time. Right on. That's what I believe too. And you reaffirmed it. Thank you very much. We're still in year 49. Later that year, Peter, as the pillar of the church, makes a business trip to Antioch. Church reason, church business, I'm sure. But in Antioch, Peter does something there in Antioch that raises the ire of his subordinate, Paul. Where Paul will be calling Peter, some nasty theological labeling. This is what happened. Now, understand the teaching of Peter, right? No. The food has nothing to do with salvation. You could eat pork and shrimp. You know the kosher food, right? The halal food. You know, they just don't eat these things. These are a prohibited food. And a lot of Jews felt like you have to avoid eating all these non-kosher food to be saved. But Peter declared, no. Has nothing to do with food. You could eat pork and shrimp. As long as you believe in Jesus Christ by faith, you are saved. This is Antioch, Gentile city, full of Greeks. This is Paul writing. You know, before certain men from James, meaning this is James, another pillar of the church, half-brother of Jesus, who was actually staunch, advocate of somehow maintain Jewish element in faith, not quite to the point that include work in how to be saved, but he was staunch, advocate of maintaining some Jewish aspect of faith. So some men from James came up to Antioch. That's when Peter was eating with Gentiles. What that means is that Peter is eating pork. Oh no, Jews don't eat no pork. But he's teaching, he's living by what he's teaching now. Hey, it's not about food, so he's eating pork, bacon. But then when Peter sees these two guys, he recognizes these two guys. Now, Peter is the indisputable leader of the church along with James. But when he sees this underling, the cultural press was so strong still. When he looked at him, he got all nervous. Oh, my goodness. These are Jewish brothers, and they came eating pork. And he got fearful. But when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. In other words, hey, I didn't eat the bacon. Do you get this? I need the bacon. He's the boss. But then the cultural press of Ethnocentric Judaism was so strong that momentarily Peter went back to his old habit because he was fearful of men. Sounds familiar? The old habits sometimes does not just go away that easily. But this time, Peter is not just disciple following Jesus. He is the head of the church, or pillar of the church, followed by many, many lives. Paul writes, and the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, even Barnabas. In other words, because the leader had fallen, everybody lined up doing the same thing. And Paul wasn't happy. Paul said to his superior Peter, but when Cephas came to Antioch, Peter, that's his Hebrew name, when Peter came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face. Wow, what a strong expression. You know what that means? I'm sorry, but it means that's what it is. He went. Now, Paul in the hierarchy of the church, Paul is not. He's a mid-management or lower. Paul is still in the middle range. Peter is on top. But Paul was so ticked up at what just occurred, he went to his face because he stood condemned. I imagine a baseball manager going after an umpire. Ever seen that? When I saw that, Galatians 2:14, when I saw that their conduct was not in step with the truth of the gospel, it was not personal, but it was really about right doctrine, truth. Why Peter's action was egregious? Salvation is made to appear as if it has to do with not eating certain food again. If you eat this, you cannot be saved. Peter was wrong. He compromised the gospel by making appear as if not eating certain food is critical to being saved. Theologically, doctrinally, truth-wise, Peter was on the right, Peter was wrong, and Paul was right. But when I saw that their conduct was not in step with the truth of the gospel, the Jewish believers followed the corrupted way of their leader, Peter. This is a colossal failure. I said to Cephas before them all, he says this in front of everybody. I mean, the only way I can really make this come alive is, let's see, Pastor Young, in front of you guys, Chris Kron comes out and confronts him and goes to his face, and you're wrong. That's what this is. Now, can you imagine a nice guy like Chris Kron doing things like that? Now, can you imagine what's going on? How do you feel? You're Peter. How do you feel? You know you're wrong. You know you don't have no justification. But this is, we all are not that secure. We already know that he was hurt because Jesus asked him, do you love me 3 times? It's that guy. And then this happened. Do you think he was hurt? What do you think? If you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live like Jews? In other words, if you, though a Jew, live like a hypocrite and not like a Jew, non-hypocrite, how can you force the Gentiles not to eat non-kosher food, is what he's saying. But that's not where it ends. How do we know what happened in Antioch 2,000 years ago? Because in those days, they had their own version of Facebook. It was called Book of Galatians. Paul then wrote about Peter's hypocrisy in his letter to the Galatians. That's Facebook 2020. And that's how the whole world came to know about Peter's hypocrisy from 49 to 2020 in several thousand languages. We all know what he did. Can you imagine this? Wherever you go, what's your name? Peter. What about you? Bacon. What about bacon? Bacon. Antioch bacon. Do you know? Yes. How do you know? Paul posted in his Facebook called Galatians. I mean, can you imagine that? You make a mistake and your ex-best friend posted on Facebook with pictures. They all know what you did. That's what happened. Has that ever happened to you? That happened to Peter. Let's go back to the shrink's couch. How do you feel about what happened? After several days, Peter, after all, is a matter of principle. Well, if I had any resentment toward Paul, that's secondary. I felt guilt and shame for compromising the gospel. Again, because of my fear of men, I led people astray from the truth. My bad. Yeah, I did wrong. But you know what? I also feel so embarrassed because people everywhere know about my hypocrisy and my leadership failure. Everybody knows what I did. Can you live with that? Can Peter live with this failure? And he has only him to blame. Paul, he was led by the Holy Spirit. It was a too critical matter to just settle privately. In the meantime, what he did becomes new standard whereupon gospel would be corrupted. So it had to be publicized that what he did was wrong. Truth over personal discomfort, say the least. So, doctor, got anything for the sin of hypocrisy, the shame, guilt that comes with it? Yeah, this is what I'm dealing with. I feel so shameful. I feel guilty, embarrassed. Modern psychology. Again, let's not call it a sin. It's hyper-dietary trauma, HTT. That's the game they play. Do you understand? You bring any sin, they're going to play a word game. Let's just call it HDT or ZTT or KDA. And you need a therapy for that. Peter, does that help? No, it does not help. It does not help. Let's go back to Hobart Mauer. If psychologist is going to be able to deal with the reality of shame and guilt, we have to somehow understand a new term. We just cannot talk about it, shame and guilt, as wrongdoing or maladjustment. We may have to reintroduce the word into the vocabulary of psychologists. What word would that be? This is a top-notch atheistic psychologist, sure out of pragmatic reason. We need to introduce the word sin back to our vocabulary. Hamartia, a term from archery. When you miss the mark, that is sin. You miss the mark, that woman dies. We no longer have the ability to truly feel the weight of our sin, for we live in a sin-sanitized world. Even in the church, we feel rather uncomfortable the word sin, because our consumers don't like the word that much. The father of psychologists, Freud, all religion was itself the result of neurosis, hang-ups, obsessive thought, anxiety. It came out of some sickness on our part. Religious dogmas are illusions, fulfillments of the oldest, strongest, and most insistent wishes of mankind. When a man accepts all the absurdities of religious doctrine, we need not be greatly surprised at the weakness of his intellect. The first doctrine that must be rejected in the field of psychology is the original sin. You didn't commit that, but you are inheritors of the effect of the original sin. You see, having rejected human sinfulness, psychologists see human nature as good that is shaped by subconscious neurotic drives. But Mauer breaks with Freud. What sort of? Let me continue what he has to say on this lecture. I'm not a believer, not a religious man. He's not a Christian. I don't even like the word sin, but it carries a greater sense of reality of what it is all about than the word we use. Syndrome, disorder. I'm just pragmatically borrowing the word only to be able to alleviate the sense of guilt and shame with which we live. You know, if we merely call it wrongdoing or sickness, we do not understand the gravity of what it is to violate some of these moral laws from which we are trying to break ourselves away. The root of our problem. What is the root of our problem? We have to go back to the garden. That is when all this spirals out of control. You know, in Genesis 3:7, when they had done what was not to be done, the eyes of both were open and they knew that they were naked. Shame and guilt suddenly inundated on them. Insecurity followed, and a sense of inadequacy. This is a human nature. There is human nature, and we all share in it. This is a human condition. Our nature has been corrupted. Psychology is absolutely wrong when they say that our nature is neutral at best and good at worst. It is just affected by bad social condition. It's a fat lie in biblical worldview. It is the garden where the nature was inherited by the rest of humanity. Shame and guilt is not because you had done something wrong. That compounds it. But our nature inherently breathes shame and guilt, insecurity, inadequacy, compounded by what we actually do, sins. 3:8. The man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord. So we hide. We separate from God because holy God, unholy, they cannot coexist. Light and darkness cannot coexist. So we hide from the clean, holy, the light of God. Where does this come from? Shame, guilt, insecurity, inadequacy. It's because we have been separated from God. If you have never, ever trusted Jesus Christ, you are in the condition of being separated from God. And no wonder shame, guilt, insecurity, inadequacy are part of your everyday ontology, your being. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloth. Feeling shame and guilt, inadequate insecurity, they have to hide and they have to cover themselves. What is that? Human effort to cover our shame and guilt. And there are different wrapping that different humans try. Peter, for him, it was gift wrap his fear with ethnocentric leadership. So scared of those guys. Little girl, hey, I know you. 6'2", 250 pound Brody man. I don't know him. I'm so scared. Bacon, oh, those two guys, I'm so scared. He gift wrapped it with ethnocentric leadership. Jews. For some, their gift wrapping is a little money. I feel so secure. I feel so adequate. I don't feel no guilt and shame as long as I got some money. For others, they gift wrap themselves with nip and tuck. That's their loincloth. That's not kainos, neos, new creation in time. So in time, it will get old again. Oh, particularly popular with Asian. Gift wrapping inadequacy with degrees. Lots of it. Could be me. If we try to fix problems of broken relationship, unbelievers, or fellowship, broken fellowship, believers with God by human effort, gift wrapping with degrees, gift wrapping with nip and tuck, gift wrapping with, in Peter's case, emphasis leadership, gift wrapping with active social life, gift wrapping with little money, I'm afraid this is our version of covering made of fig leaf. It won't last. Fig leaves do not last. Guilt and shame, insecurity, inadequacy will remain with vengeance. You know, the next best effort to receive forgiveness from God, apart from Jesus, was animal sacrifice in the Old Testament. This is what Hebrews says about that effort. If sacrifices repeated endlessly year after year can make perfect those who draw near to it, if the animal's blood, the defectless, wonderful animal's blood, if that can really draw us near to God because we've been cleansed of our sin, the worshiper would have been cleansed once for all and would no longer have felt guilt for their sin. But these can't. Because it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sin. And that was the second best effort to cleanse our sin. When God told the Old Testament people to use a defectless animal, lay hands on it to transfer their sin and kill that animal, and it temporarily removed their guilt externally. But ultimately, it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sin. How much less your money, your nip and tuck, your degrees. No. This must be resolved in Christ Jesus. There's therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. The substitute death of Jesus. You see, the only cleanser available to wipe out the immovable stain that the world's best has long given up, it is Jesus Christ. Available to wipe out the immovable stain, shame and guilt that psychology has long given up. So does this stuff really, really work? I told you about, I promised you that I will tell you something happened with Peter and Jesus even before that conversation took place on the beach. I want to tell you about that. So after the crucifixion, the loneliest man in the world was Peter. The loneliest man. You love Jesus. You really believe that you were going to go to prison and die with Jesus. You really meant it, but when the push came to shove, like many of us, we failed. We did not come through. We betrayed our friend. We shouldn't have done it, but I did it. I shouldn't have violated my word to my best friend, but I took her girlfriend. I shouldn't have done it, but I did it. I said, I'm not going to do it, but I took that job. I did it, and now everybody hates me. Well, how was Peter feeling when Mary told the disciples, still mourning and weeping, Bible says, because the first people to see Jesus resurrected were women, one being Mary. Hey, Jesus is alive. This is Mark 16, 10 through 11. Worship, you can come on. I'm about wrapping up. Jesus is alive. I've seen him. He told you to meet him in Galilee. Now, I just want you to know, when Peter hears this, what do you think Peter is feeling? Come on. You betrayed this Jesus. You saw his look. Maybe it was condemning look. And lo and behold, he's alive. I would say my feeling is mixed. That's great, but how could I face him? That's great. Oh my goodness. And he went to see us? Jesus is alive. I've seen him. He told you to meet him in Galilee. You can play. I want to read this. This will go with, how would I be able to face the Lord? You've been there. These are real human beings. Catholic Church, Saint Peter. Say Saint Peter, huh? He's a normal Peter. Regular Peter. You, Peter. How would I be able to face the Lord? Would he even want to see me? The one who failed him so miserably. You don't think he thought that? You been there? Would he even want to see me? He want to see us? I'm not worthy to be a disciple. I shouldn't go. I don't want to go. I feel so embarrassed. I feel so shameful. I'm not going. It's at that moment Mary would have said to Peter, hey, Peter, the angel specifically told me, go tell his disciples and Peter. I find that very significant. Had the angel said, go tell the disciples, yeah, well, I'm not a disciple anymore. I disqualify myself. He's talking about them, not me. But Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Me? Mary, he specified me? Yes, Peter. Lord called my name? He wants to see me? Go tell disciples and Peter, this is our Jesus. This is our God. You wronged him. You violated trust. As a church leader, you screwed up. You did wrong. It is not a syndrome. It is not some kind of disease. You sinned. Own up. Stop blaming your parents. Oh, I'm a parent. I did a lot of wrong. I regret a lot of things I did as a father. Somebody asked me, what is your greatest sin? I don't do a lot of bad things. My greatest regret, temper. And you go, I figured as much. He has forgiven me. He still loves me. You know how Peter couldn't use the word agapao? Not me. Phileo. Peter writes in 1 Peter 4:8. Love covers over multitude of sin. That love is no longer phileo, it's agape. Do you understand? Do you understand? Now he is at total freedom. When he writes this in mid-60s, I know that love. Phileo is all right. But the hottest love in town is agape. Love. And that's how I believe Peter learned that agape covers over a multitude of sins. Including the sin of hypocrisy and compromising the gospel. Forgiven. You know, I want to share a little story. I want to make it very short. So I told you about I was in this church, bunch of guys, 30 people. It was July, 2 months after I was saved. At 2 o'clock service, there was a guest speaker. His name is Chang. He was something of a celebrity, a big name, charismatic, but he was a guest speaker, young person. This is 1981, July. And he he's into healing, through God's power. So 2 o'clock service, there weren't that many people. I was in it. And he said, I want to pray for healing. So those who have healing needs, stand up. Well, I wasn't sick, but I had very poor eyesight. So I stood up. And he said, place your hand over where you hurt. So I'm a newbie. I'm innocent. I believe, and then pray the prayer of healing. So I really pray. Oh, hallelujah. Well, nothing happened. But anyway, because there were so few people, he actually went to each person and just pray for people and ask. So he came to me. And there's a thing called the word of knowledge. God gives special knowledge about the person. So he looked at me and said, you still have a rebellious spirit against your dad. For 2 months, I was trying to be so good. Not cuss. You know, I used to cuss a lot. Not cuss. I tried to be so good. At that moment when he said, you still have a rebellious spirit against your father, something snapped. In the middle of service, I gave him the middle finger. Something just overtook. I felt like I tried so hard to be good, and you telling me I'm still not good enough. I said, F you. This was in the service. And I stormed upstairs. And I happened to just run into what turned out to be junior high room. That was July. In January, 7 months, I will be actually in that room preaching and teaching. At that time, who knew? I just went in. I have a temper, so I started throwing chairs and tables. And just in mad anger, I made a mess of that room. Holes everywhere. I was so angry. I don't know what I was angry at, but I was just angry. Oh! After 5 minutes, I realized what I've done is that I am not going to get kicked out of this church. That was Sunday. And everybody knew what I did. And I felt such guilt and such a shame. All right. Not only did I cuss out the guest speaker, I went up and destroyed a junior high room with broken chairs. And so the custodian of that church never forgave me. Eventually he would, but there's a reason. So, and I realized I'm going to get kicked out. I don't know what I did all day Sunday, but Monday morning, 5:30 prayer meeting, I didn't go, of course. 9 o'clock Bible study, I didn't go. Everybody went. Nobody talked to me. Right? Nobody talks to me, right? Bad kid. What I did was I packed my bag. I'm going to get kicked out, so I packed my bag, my little room that I share with other people. I'm thinking, why did I do that? So I'm waiting for somebody to come and say, hey, pastor wants to meet you or something. So surely somebody came up. Right. Pastor wants to meet you, and I saw glee on his face. Maybe not. So I go, well, I'm going to take it like a man. This really happened. I never forget this because this is the first time I've really experienced God's mercy. Punishment you don't get. And grace. Favor that you don't deserve. Everybody was mad at me. I mean, I cussed out the guest speaker. And I destroyed the junior high room. And I walked into that room with 30-some guys all looking at me. And I'm like, and pastor got up. He could be feisty. I mean, he does kick us if we don't get a 5:30 prayer meeting. And he got up to speak. And this is what he said. We all know what that guy did yesterday. And I know why he did it. He did it because he loves God. He loves God. We can replace chairs and tables. But we cannot replace Ryan. Ryan, you stay. I didn't see that as one man's kind act towards me. That God was using him to show me what forgiveness is like. Guilt and shame, it was on its way out. So I know something about this. Do you? That which should be taken home from today's sermon. Number one, this week extend your time alone with God and earnest play. Pray. Say to him, I'm truly sorry for my sins. I'm truly sorry for my sins. Make no excuse for this. Genuine repent. Not going to change your mind. Let's not blame parents as a primary resort to somehow alleviate myself of anxiety, inadequacy, insecurity. Parents were guilty as charged. But may I ask you to start with your sin? I never sinned. That's a bald-faced lie. I'm truly sorry for my sins. Make no excuse for sin. Genuinely repent. Repeatedly tell Jesus, I love you. I got power, man. I love you. And worship him. I invite you to my heart, Jesus. I will be your host for the evening. Come to my house. I'll be your host. And host the presence of God. Then ask the Lord to wipe out all the shame and guilt you have been carrying. Memorize Romans 8:1. Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Don't be like Dr. Maurer, because he did not follow his own advice. He later took his own life. Don't be like him. He had a correct diagnosis, but he didn't follow his advice. He took his own life. In God's love, forgive those who wronged you. Let's begin with your parents. Give them a break. Parenting is hard. We make mistakes. And I ask you today to release that anger, bitterness, and resentment toward your parents. I know how your parents feel. I feel the same thing. And I believe that this is how we can experience the removing of the immovable stain that the world has long given up. And this is how it can be transformed by guilt and shame and all that has enslaved us in Jesus Christ. There's a room for therapy and counseling, all of that, of course, but this is where it needs to start. Do you understand? So today, as you spend the last day with each other, would you consider extend your time along with God and just pray. Ask the Lord to wipe out all the shame and guilt you have been carrying through Romans 8:1. And God, forgive those who wrong